few years ago, I was in Maryland, where I grew up and where I went to college, with my nephews and my brother, who was their father. And one of my nephews was really into basketball. And so he asked me to come and shoot baskets with him on an outside court near their house. And I loved that. You know, here I am, Aunt Pat, you know, I'm much older than he is, and he wants to go shoot basketballs with his aunt. So I thought that was great. So we went down to the courts, and we were shooting baskets, and a friend of his came. And while we were just shooting around, his friend, my nephew told his friend that I had played basketball at the University of Maryland. Now, University of Maryland basketball now, women's basketball now, is much different from what it was when I was playing. And I know that this friend of his was so impressed because I was a University of Maryland former basketball player. But he was envisioning the Xfinity Center and, you know, all the big stadium and all the Hall of Fame wall and just all the big time trappings that women's basketball has now when you play at Division I, like at the University of Maryland. But that was not my experience at the University of Maryland because I was a pre-Title IX athlete there. And Title IX, just to make sure everybody knows what that is, it was a federal law that was passed in 1972, which said that all education programs in high schools and colleges had to be free of sex discrimination. And one of the areas of schools that had the biggest effect in was athletics. Prior to Title IX, when I played basketball, there was no such thing as equality. Whereas the men had buses that they would travel into away games, and they had uniforms, and they had big schedules, and they played in the big stadium where everybody came, and there was lots of excitement around their games. For the women's team, we played in a little gym called Prinkert Fieldhouse that had no provision for spectators. It was just really, literally just a basketball court. And we didn't have uniforms, or actually there was one set of uniforms for several different teams. So when the field hockey team was finished with their season, they would pass the uniforms on to us, the basketball team. And when we were finished, we would pass the basketball uniforms on to the lacrosse team. So we were sharing uniforms because we had no money. And when we went to away games, we drove ourselves rather than having a bus take us to the games. And it was a very different kind of participation as a woman athlete. And it never even occurred to me really that it could be different then. That's just the way it was. And so Title IX changed all that because after Title IX, people started paying attention to what the men had and what the women had in athletic programs, and things started to get better. So in about 2005, the University of Maryland had a program where they invited all of the pre-Title IX women athletes to come back to the university, and they were going to award us our M's, the letter M, because pre-Title IX, when I played, women were not allowed to earn that M, even though we were athletes and played a full schedule of basketball and the other sports. Women were not allowed to get that M. That was only for the men. And so they had a wonderful program where they invited all of us to come back, and there must have been about 150 women there of all ages, like from 70s on down to 20s, who came back, and all of us were awarded our letter M and a little plaque that said our name and the sports we played and the years that we played. And I have that on my wall now in my office, and I'm very, very proud of it. And I have to say that it was the first time when I got that M that I really felt like a real member of the University of Maryland athletic family.